Hi, everyone. Is it harder today to lose body fat than, say, a few decades ago?
I think the answer is yes.
Absolutely. We're going to find out why. As always, this is Miss Natural Olympia here.
Did you say hair? This is Doug the Formulator.
Getting ready for our rock and roll
Full
cruise. Got the
disclosure.
big hair going on.
Full disclosure. I forgot we had the podcast. I came right from an appointment. The appointment was not for my hair, as you can see. My hair has not been done, but it matches the shirt. So here
Getting
we
ready for the
go.
cruise.
Here we go.
Here we
All right.
go.
So let's talk about weight loss. And let's talk about weight loss nowadays versus back in the day. What do you think the deal is?
Man, it really comes down to, I think they put a name on it, and it's called Obesegens, but simply it's chemicals that are keeping the cells from being able to metabolize food as easy as it used to. And it's chemicals that are causing a disruption, right, in hormones. Like
Right.
that's such a huge deal. Like we've experienced that with almost every client.
Yeah, no, for sure. Okay, so where are we getting these things? What's the deal?
Well, let's maybe even start about there was a quote that we gave. We just came off a weekend, 4 days, 250 docs all over the world now, like
Can you
California.
hear that? That's thunder.
Thunder. Perfect time.
Means this is going to
Great
be
things
a
happen when thunder
good
lightning happens.
podcast today.
That's it.
So here we go.
So we have doctors not just from America, but we had some from Mexico, Canada, right, Philippines. Really cool to see how this is branching out. But the reason that's important for today is I was asking a few of them. One medical doctor that comes all the time is stuff in the Caribbean area,
Hmm.
and I'm like, you guys have the same problem. He goes, man, you guys have it worse in America. Like we still can get people just to get off of the junk, just like quit sodas, right? Get on a basic eating plan and getting great results. You guys, it's harder here in America, and I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, I do feel like that's interesting. Not talking about the Caribbean, but I've even had, friends that have competed recently in places like Tokyo. And they said after we compete, we indulge a little too much than we should. But when you are in the US and you indulge, you feel it. And you feel it the next day hardcore, not just overeating, but an abundance of chemicals and you just feel more
Right.
bloated, that kind of thing.
But I
Um,
don't want people to get a like feel like okay, that was just too tough to do. There's an upside to this in America you don't get other places because you're not just going to get fat reduction if you follow the right plan.
yeah,
You're going to
no,
get mental
yeah.
benefits and everything else. And it kind of comes to that quote: if it doesn't challenge you, can't change you.
Why are you cutting me off? I wasn't done.
Go ahead.
No, I was just saying when she ate in Tokyo, she overdid it just like she does in the US, but felt none of the symptoms that she feels when she's in the US. But I love that transition. You're right. There's, you know, not only can you experience the weight loss and all of the side effects that come with obesity, right?
Mhm.
You're going to also experience clarity of mind and all kinds of other things because when you get rid of some of these obesogens,
Mhm.
look at me learning words. It creates a whole new level of health.
Absolutely. And what's interesting is one of the statistics we gave was that the in America by the end of the year, if things keep going like they are, one out of every two Americans are going to be obese.
Wow.
But with the doctors, it was another ballgame because if you look at the obesity rate amongst people that have a condition, we're talking everything, just from stomach issues, aches and pains. Basically, if you're going to a chiropractor, a naturopath, your medical doctor, if you're going to get treatment for something, 3 out of 4 people are obese, which shows why, having a little excess body fat puts pressure on things. And so instead of getting the little cold, it makes
Right.
it worth, right? Little joint ache makes it worth.
Right. So it's not just the the pain of being overweight and that causes, but it's putting pressure on all kinds of other things, pressure on organs, right?
Right.
On muscles, on joints.
Yeah, and that's what we talk about visceral fat a lot. Remember, you have subcutaneous fat, which what most people see, but you have the visceral fat, and so even people that seem very lean can have a lot of visceral fat, meaning fat around their organs that can cause a lot of issues. And so We know the cause of obesity in the past was just an energy imbalance, right? How many calories you
Okay.
consume. And we have pretty great luck with, oh, your body needs around 1,600 calories. Let's take in,
Yeah.
that, and we're able to lose it. Lack of movement, that's always been a factor,
Right.
you
Yeah.
know?
3, how about the types of food and drinks that are consumed daily?
And that's, I think, gotten worse. It used to be that water was the number
Agreed.
one thing consumed. Now, it was actually water and coffee. Okay.
Hmm.
And if you look back at history, even 67 years ago, it was water and coffee. And now it's flavored, sugary, all that water, but the coffee isn't just coffee.
Right. The coffee is coffee and cream and syrups and
Mhm.
everything, right?
Yep, and the whole Starbucks factor is finally really coming out that now there's chemicals in a lot of the Starbucks coffees that's used in big food and big tobacco to
Wow.
cause cravings for that specific.
And now you
Uh,
know why you love your Starbucks
well,
because
and,
you're meant
and
to.
it blows my mind, not being a coffee drinker or anything like that. I love observing, and it blows my mind that we'll go by coffee shops with no one there, and then a line not even 100 feet away, like in malls and stuff, at a
Right.
Starbucks, and the lines clear around.
Guilty.
And it's like, are you crazy? But it makes sense, right? And
Right.
so that's number three, and that has changed.
Yeah, and that kind of leads into what number 4 is, which is toxicities from food and
Mhm.
the environment. So, what's the cause of obesity? 1, it's the energy imbalance, consuming too much food. 2, lack of movement, not getting enough movement and burn in the day. 3, the types of foods and drinks that we're consuming. And then 4, of course, the toxicities that are in the food and the environment that we live in.
And that's the key. And so let's just kind of hone in on that. I know we've talked a lot about this subject. It seems to be the one that we get a lot of questions on, though. And so we're going to kind of go in, deep dive in one area. And we've talked about this a little bit before, but this is becoming a huge factor because GLP-1 is becoming a household name. When, the only
Right.
time you'd ever hear about it's like when we teach seminars to the doctors and explain how the body handles hunger. But now it's becoming this household name, which is good because people are like understanding it, and we can teach about your body making, natural GLP-1 to be able to control cravings. But it's also being used to uh, make it so that people can just sell products and say the name GLP-1, right?
Yeah.
And just promote supplements. And then it's making it worse because people aren't getting results. And they're like, oh, I tried some GLP-1 supplement and it just doesn't work, and they get more depressed.
Yeah, there's a difference. So, do you want to talk about ghrelin and leptin right here?
Yeah, that's my favorite. Like GLP-1 is what the world's talking about, and that's a chemical that the body secretes from the probiotics or, from the lining in the stomach. But really, we don't even need to talk about GLP-1. It should be ghrelin and leptin.
Okay, so tell us what ghrelin and leptin are. Sometimes I like to think of ghrelin like gremlin.
I you said that the other day, and I love that because ghrelin, the gremlins one, it stimulates hunger, right?
It's ravenous. It
Yeah,
can't be satiated.
right. And so when you have a lot of gremlins, a lot of ghrelin, so when ghrelin is higher, then we have the gremlins come out, right?
Yep.
You can't handle it. You
Ravenous.
just ravenous. And that's really important. The ghrelin and leptin are needed. You don't want to get rid of either, but they need to be balanced. So when ghrelin goes high, it creates that. And what creates a high ghrelin? Right? That's the big thing. It's like, okay, what is it
Yeah.
that does it? And it comes back to the number four thing again, right? It's not
Processed
just
foods.
it's the
Yeah.
processed foods. And very specifically today, we're going to focus in on two things. One is the microplastics in the food. The name we use is called phthalates, which is a part of that, but phthalates. And the second one is one that we don't talk about very often, but it's glyphosate. Glyphosate
Okay.
is the chemical that's sprayed to kill weeds and Roundup and things
Mm-hmm.
like that. But they're two different things, right? The plastics that are, phthalates that are kind of put into our food on purpose to boost ghrelin, and then also, though, the things that are sprayed that I think to begin with, let's be like fair, probably just, okay, this is a cool thing that kills weeds, but come to find out it's damaging our food,
Right.
right, in a big way.
Right.
Eh,
So those are the things that raise your ghrelin.
mhm.
Okay. Now, what about leptin?
So leptin, we don't want it to lower. So what's happened is these processed foods, microplastics, glyphosates raise ghrelin, and they also lower leptin. And so the same chemicals that raise ghrelin lower leptin, and now when you have that big chasm like that, the big difference, that's what the problem is. And it's the same thing when we talk about hormones, right?
Yeah, right. And I think I just want to point out here, you know how lots of times we talk, and it's sometimes when you talk to people, they're like, it's easier for me to be 100 than it is for me to be, 90%.
Mhm.
And I think that's because when you're 100, you're ridding yourself more of the microplastics, the phthalates, and, everything. And so
Mm.
it's easier. Your ghrelin and your leptin are staying balanced more often. And then the second you drop down and give it 90%, well, then you're spiking them because you've introduced, all the things that make you hungry
That's a
again.
really good point. I mean, I think that's a huge point that maybe people need to understand what Hillary just said is you can be like back in the day, man, I could be, go along and I could do the little cheap foods and do the 80 or 90% and not a big deal.
Right.
Right, because it was just the foods.
Right.
Now when you introduce those chemicals and that'll spike it. It's like, man, I got ravenous quickly when before I could have had that little cheat or treat and been
Yeah,
fine.
so maybe even as we start to discuss this more and more, but maybe when we talk about our treat foods or the items that we indulge in, maybe it's more about indulging in homemade or cleaner
That's it.
indulgences than it is the processed prepackaged ones. And that's kind of been more of a goal for myself, especially this year,
Mhm.
is to really try to make those indulgences worth it.
Yeah,
And, to be able to have something, and if it's cleaner, then I know I'll be able to have it and then move on and get back to, normal everyday diet,
normal
like diet.
calories, right.
Um, then
I like that.
the other.
I like that a lot. It's a good thought. And so just to also kind of set the foundation is that there's research studies, and we'll put them in the notes, showing that the tobacco companies specifically added these microplastics, these phthalates,
Wild.
to the tobacco to raise ghrelin and lower leptin.
And did they realize, you're telling me they realized the havoc that it was going to cause on the digestive system, on the hormonal system within the body?
Oh, 100%, because, to think that they were moral about it and that we already know better. The research that came out that tobacco was cancer causing, they didn't care. How can we just ride this wave as long as we can? When
So
much
they
they're doing the same thing with food.
so they rode the wave as long as they could. Then they started taking over, the food companies
Mhm.
and just kind of injected them with the same type
Absolutely,
of
and that's
chemicals.
what's crazy with one of the studies we'll put in here too is that there's studies showing that processed foods increase ghrelin and leptin at the same levels as tobacco did, and that the same chemicals that were in tobacco are now in our food from the same companies because, right, the tobacco companies bought out the food companies. So I think that we've said it enough, but I want people to really have that sink in
Yeah,
and
you're
get
really
to.
driving this point home.
Yeah, like, well, it's critical. It's like you
It's
just said,
critical.
is that the cheats need to be different. The treats need to be different, or else you're going to sabotage all that work because you're putting in that high dose chemical that's going to really disrupt ghrelin and leptin.
Yeah, and I think we've had these discussions for years. We've been married for decades, and our whole marriage we've had these discussions. And you've brought up big pharma, tobacco, these big food companies, and I don't even think that it's registered with me as well as it has until the last few years.
Right.
I mean, it's been a focus of conversation. So I do feel like it's something that we need to hear over and over again so that we can really understand just how
Yeah.
deep it goes.
Absolutely. And it was interesting. The conversation came up this weekend with a lot of doctors about who really is in the best place to have a fat reduction program in the clinics, the types of doctors. And what really came up to, should it be someone that is overweight and is losing weight, or someone that's lost a bunch of weight, or someone that really has for decades kept it off? And the answer is all of them.
Oh,
Um,
100%.
and I think that that's the key, is that everyone can be in their lane and inspire others. And one of the comments was, "Well, I don't like going to people that haven't had to lose weight in the last decade or two or ever." And my answer was, "That's stupid, because the truth is, you want to be with people like in business that have proven for decades how to run their business, not just a one-shot wonder and they had something lucky to happen. And you get to learn what they've done. You want to study the Hunzas, the people in Sardinia, Italy, the people that you know growing up, the Jack LaLannes, right? Rachel McLeish's, all these people that they lived their life. And you're like, wait a second, it was the lifestyle
Right.
over time.
And I think that's not to say that those that are in their weight loss journey and continue to lose weight can't be the who for many people. They are going to be the who for many people. In fact, those people will be able to inspire a group that, maybe you or
Oh,
I or
100%.
somebody else never could. And so I think the point is to say that it has to be one type of person uh, is wrong.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's critical. So let's just kind of dive down to finish up the strong point of the podcast today. And I think the last point to set it up is the understanding that we're not all human.
You're about to tell me we're half human. I'm half a human.
You're half a human.
That's offensive.
And so we're half bacteria. And
That's even more offensive.
and so we need to treat our bacteria, half of us, properly.
So,
And it's the bacteria that end up determining the ghrelin leptin in our body, and foods that destroy the bacteria mess up the ghrelin leptin. So look at it that way, is how we treat our gut, the friendly bacteria, the microbiome,
mhm.
will determine how it treats us with havoc, chaos,
Mm.
right? And so that's why we want to focus on the whole foods. Probiotics are huge. Probiotics are one of the most key factors in being able to reduce weight that there is.
Yeah, I love even just thinking about it that way. Feeding the 50% side of you the way it needs to be fed, which is your gut bacteria, right? All the bacteria within your body, so that it will help you to choose the foods that will keep you healthiest, right?
Absolutely. Yep. And I think the one point we talked about with these people out there promoting GLP-1 products, right, and all that, what's happening is you're getting a lot of allopathic medical approach to this, which is the complete opposite of what needs to happen. And what I mean by that is this, and I think we can have a whole podcast on it, but there's no drug in the world that cures diabetes. There's no drug in the world that cures heart disease. There's no drug in the world that cures arthritis. Basically, there's no drug in the world that cures any disease. Not one drug cures disease. What cures every disease is lifestyle. Lifestyle is the thing that cures it. So, what we want to do is to understand when we're talking about anything, supplements, nutrition, all that, it needs to go after the cure. And a lot of these products now are saying, look, we're going to get people so focused on GLP-1 in the body, and raising it up like semaglutide and things like that do, which I think can be great at times. But let's get people so focused on it that we're going to have them not understand or to get away from the holistic approach. And what I mean by that is there's a balance in the body. And your GLP-1, if it went too crazy, you would never eat,
Right. Right.
right?
Yeah, no, we've had clients in the past that have used semaglutide, right? And they've loved it and it's been great. But some of them get to a point where they're like, I'm physically not hungry ever. And it's like, okay, well, maybe we went a little too hard there,
Yeah,
And the goal is to use it as a tool as you're improving your lifestyle. It is
absolutely.
never there as the end all be all cure to anything. It is a tool to be used as we are improving our lifestyle.
Right. And so if you're not using semaglutide, you would think, well, I want to do everything I can to raise my GLP-1, and low GLP-1 is bad. Well, it's like everything in the body, there's a balance.
Mm.
And so there are certain things in the body to make sure that this GLP-1 is at the right level. It's not too high, it's not too low.
Hmm.
But what's happening with a lot of these marketers is they're saying, well, hey, there's enzymes in the body that
Oh.
will, will lower GLP-1, so don't take them, and don't take these certain ingredients because it might lower GLP-1. And it's completely false. My main point with this, and I just want to drive that home really quick, it's about balance. And one of the things that's being taught by a lot of these companies, the multi-level companies that out there, it's absolutely ludicrous, as they're saying, here, we don't want you to have this enzyme in the body called DDP4, which is just the name of an enzyme that digests gluten, right? Dipeptidyl peptidase 4. It digests. We don't want you to have this enzyme in the body because there's a chance it will also work on GLP-1. Well, it's made to balance GLP-1. It won't lower it if it doesn't need to be lowered, right? Number
Hmm.
one. But there's a huge problem with that because remember, GLP-1 is created in the
Yeah.
gut, right, by
Mm-hmm.
the bacteria.
Right.
And if we don't digest gluten, gluten will in the gut cover and hurt the good bacteria, causing a disease called celiac disease, which completely ruins the lining of the stomach. So now you're not making GLP-1. Do you see the problem?
Right.
Is actually it's the opposite. You need to make sure that your body's natural enzymes to digest the food, especially gluten, is present. That's why, like, we recommend taking Digestamil and
Right.
having the healthier grains and those types of things that aren't GMO. And so my main point today, and I think that we were just talking about this, is look, don't get so caught up in these things like GLP-1 and all this that you lose the holistic approach. Let your body decide what the right levels are in that. We will introduce semaglutide in that in situations where we've seen the body's been abused so much, it needs to be restimulated, right, to get going again and do that. But we want the body to say, hey, this is the right amount. You're eating the right foods. You're not taking in the phthalates, the plastics, and those types of things. And so clean up our diet. Try not to have the foods with the phthalates and these things like the glyphosates in it, but there are some things I think to close to give people kind of that silver lining. There are some things to lower plastics, and there are some things to lower glyphosates in the system.
Okay, and I'll let you continue with that. I'm going to make 1.2 because I like the point that you made with this whole like trying to teach people to not take, what is it? DDP4, is
Yeah,
that what
yeah.
it is?
The enzyme to
The
digest
enzyme to
gluten.
digest gluten. Yeah. I think the other thing to not get caught up in as we're discussing, weight loss and that kind of thing is the thought that macros over everything else, right?
Mm-hmm.
So also
Yeah,
keeping,
hit that.
yeah. So I think keeping in mind that your macronutrients, we've heard the, what is it? If it fits my macros,
Yeah.
right? And so it gives you this leeway to have these, you know, these processed foods that are just only going to make you hungrier, but as long as you stay in within your macros. Well, let's try to make our macronutrients as nutrient dense as possible and to keep them as clean as possible so that we're doing the job that we're supposed to do. It's not just about hitting a certain macronutrient amount, it's about hitting a nutrient amount.
And that goes back to 20 to 30 years ago, how it was versus now. I think with
Oh,
if it
agreed.
first, if it hits your macros concept at first, they were getting such great results with that
Right.
because you didn't have the extremely damaging, processed foods. And now people are like, well, I'm hitting them, but my cravings are crazy. Well,
Well,
it's
yeah,
because
and
the foods are bad.
I would say also with what happened with that recently is people were hitting their macros, but they also weren't, and maybe losing weight, but also not feeling as great.
Yeah.
So that can be
And that
a
comes down
contributing
to like
factor.
even some of the benefits and people that got a lot of results at first from intermittent fasting and that.
Mm.
And now there's a lot of issues with it. And because people are, having this window and they're not caring about the foods after, which then is just making them ravenous, right? So things are different and on every front. And so to just finish up, there are things that you can do to reduce the plastics and the phthalates in the system as you're cleaning up the diet. Because you can do it by cleaning up the diet, it just takes a while, months at a time
Right.
type thing. And there's a product we make called Chemzyme that has a enzyme in it called phthalazyme that digests them out. And we've seen just this weekend, like mind blown.
Mind blown. But I'm wondering whose microplastics test was the best out of everyone that took that test. I think we've talked about it here before, but
Yeah, you know who it was? It was Dr. Piquel. Haha.
aw,
It was post-test, though.
what was it?
It came in at 6.
He beat
So
me by
basically, you
3.
want to be below 30, but he was post. Hillary's beginning test was 9. You're the best by far. But
That's what I get for trying to be egotistical.
well, and that happened on stage. I'm on stage, and they brought up a paper because the test just came in, and we're blown away. What's happening is we have the special test sent to the Netherlands. We've talked about it, and it gives you the amount of microplastics. Well, the importance of that is, again, that's going to tell you how much your Grelin Leptin is off, right? And
Right.
the plastic buildup for your hormone balance for testosterone and estrogen. And we're just now getting the return tests in, and everyone that's done it, that's taken the Chemzyme, has lowered their plastic count
So
dramatically.
cool.
And the ones that have lowered the most are doing saunas too, like with you. So super excited about it. So number one, you can take something called Chemzyme. You can get hold of Optimal Health Systems. I'd recommend you go anywhere, but right now it's the only one in the world that has Thalazyme. As other companies get it, we'll let you know. The second is I'm a big fan of fulvic minerals, and you get to we use a liquid, but it is actually what gets rid of the glyphosates, right? The
Mm.
Roundup and those chemical systems. So if you take in a Chemzyme and like fulvic minerals on the daily, it doesn't take much, like 2 capsules of the Chemzyme and just a little bit, a teaspoon of the minerals,
Okay.
you're going to reduce those chemicals which balance hormones and lower, right, the plastics which balance ghrelin and leptin. So it is tougher nowadays.
Is it possible to rid your body of microplastics and the phthalates by just improving your diet, or does there need to be a cleanse of those things to get them out as you're improving?
It can be done just with the diet, but you would need to fast. You would need to fast
Okay.
at times, a 48 or 72-hour fast, because you have to go through cell autophagy to do it. So it can be done. The key is you want to do it as fast as possible.
Hmm.
That's the key, because the longer those phthalates, microplastics are in the system, they build up, in the ovaries, the testes, things like that, and you want
Okay.
to get them out. So I'm a big fan of getting them out as quick as
Hmm.
possible. And then with your diet, let's just do everything you can to get away from the processed foods. Hopefully, you've heard it 100 times from us. You're going to hear it 100 times more. And they're going right now through, the process of getting RFK in through the system and actually, official. And you're going to hear it a bunch from him too. But don't take it as a negative. Take it as, wow, we know so much now based on data. This is something that we need to change. And with that change comes some really great results.
I love it.
As always, this is Miss Natural Olympia Hillary Hare.
Stuck the formulator. Thanks.
You're welcome.